All right, picture this. It's 3 a.m. You're lying wide awake, staring up at the ceiling, and your brain is just running a marathon through every possible financial disaster that could hit you tomorrow. I mean, what if your car breaks down on the way to work? Or your laptop just completely dies? What if you lose your job? Or your dog suddenly needs emergency surgery? That visceral, stomach-dropping anxiety, that literal tightness in your chest, yeah, it's a feeling millions of us know way, way too well.
So, what actually cures that midnight panic? Well, in this explainer, we're going to look at the exact, specific amount of money you need to entirely eliminate those sleepless nights and fundamentally transform how you navigate your life. A lot of people think financial milestones are just these arbitrary numbers pulled out of thin air. But no, there's actual hard psychology and mathematics behind why certain amounts of money create dramatic, life-altering shifts in your day-to-day existence.
And honestly, here is the craziest twist. The first real game changer? It isn't $1 million. It's not even $100,000. It is exactly $10,000. That's it. There's proven psychology and math showing that hitting this specific milestone fundamentally rewires your brain and, by extension, your entire future. Okay, let's dive right into Section 1, the midnight anxiety problem, or the true cost of living paycheck to paycheck. To really grasp why 10 grand is such an incredible superpower, we first have to look at what life actually looks like when you are constantly playing defense with your money. Think about the intense mental gymnastics you have to do right there in the grocery store aisle. You're constantly calculating, right? Like, can I actually afford the name brand this week, or do I have to stick with that generic version that basically tastes like cardboard? Or think about having to invent some incredibly creative excuse to skip a $25 dinner with your friends simply because you know it'll completely wreck your budget for the week. Every single unexpected expense doesn't just feel like a hiccup, it feels like an absolute catastrophe. What's actually happening in your brain here is something psychologists call decision fatigue. See, when you have absolutely zero savings, you are forced to make something like 50 survival-based calculations every single day. Can I afford lunch? Should I pay for premium gas? And each one of those micro decisions literally burns through your mental energy. But hitting that $10,000 mark, it makes 90% of those daily stressful calculations completely irrelevant. You aren't choosing generic pasta just to survive anymore. You're simply choosing what you actually want to eat. It's totally freeing. Moving on to Section 2, the biology of 10 grand, how savings literally change your brain chemistry. So this brings us to the actual physiological effects of seeing a 5-figure bank balance for the very first time. And guys, it is not just all in your head, it is literally in your biology. Neuroscientists have actually found that reaching this milestone changes how your body responds to daily challenges. Financial security actively reduces cortisol, which is your body's primary stress hormone. So you aren't just gaining wealth here, you are actively lowering a toxic chemical in your body that causes severe anxiety and burnout. Just think about the classic check engine light coming on in your car. Now, if you're broke, that little light is a terrifying, glowing countdown to financial disaster. You immediately start panicking about maxing out your credit cards or having to awkwardly beg family for a loan. But when you're a saver with 10 grand sitting in the bank, that exact same check engine light is, well, it's just a mild annoyance. You're frustrated, sure. Nobody likes going to the mechanic, but the sheer panic, it's completely 100% gone. And this shift from absolute panic to just a mild annoyance has these massive, sweeping ripple effects across your entire life. Removing that constant hum of financial worry unlocks this vast reservoir of mental energy you didn't even know you were wasting. Studies actually show it literally cures financial insomnia, which means way better sleep. You become way more productive at work. And perhaps most importantly, you get higher emotional bandwidth. You are significantly more patient with your partner, your kids, your friends. It's a total game changer for your relationships. Next up is Section 3, emergencies versus opportunities, moving from defense to offense. So how does this money mathematically shield you from disaster and totally flip your relationship with risk? Let's just look at the math for a second. $10,000 makes you effectively immune to the vast majority of daily financial disasters that keep people stuck. Think about it. Most car repairs sit somewhere between $500 and $3,000. Boom, fully covered. A sudden urgent care visit? Completely manageable. Even the scariest scenario, job loss, is seriously mitigated. 10 grand buys you roughly 3 to 6 months of breathing room. It buys you the time to be selective about your next career move instead of just desperately taking the very first bad offer that comes your way. Now, what's really fascinating about this is a concept financial experts call the emergency fund effect.
The absolute biggest benefit of this money doesn't actually come from spending it. It comes from the profound, deep peace of mind of just knowing it's there. The counterintuitive truth is that most people who build up this safety net, they don't actually spend it on emergencies at all. They end up spending it on opportunities.
See, having a safety net completely transforms your baseline confidence. Without savings, you might skip, say, a $50 networking event because $50 feels like an absolute fortune you can't risk. But with that $10,000 shield, you comfortably pay the $50, you attend the event, and hey, maybe you meet someone who offers you a job with a $5,000 raise. You walk into salary negotiations differently. You have the power to just walk away from bad deals. You finally have the breathing room to invest a couple grand in a certification that permanently boosts your income.
All right, Section 4, Becoming a Saver. Why the mindset matters way more than the math.
Now, we have to acknowledge the giant elephant in the room here. $10,000 sounds absolutely, completely impossible if you're currently struggling to save even $100 a month. I get it. But here's the secret. The hardest part isn't actually saving the money itself. It's developing the identity of someone who saves money. Most people treat saving like a crash diet. They restrict absolutely everything, they burn out in a month, and they go right back to their old habits. Reaching this milestone requires a fundamental mental shift. You aren't just temporarily sacrificing. You are actively becoming a completely different type of person who thinks long-term.
Let's look at how this builds, because the progression of saving is exactly like building a muscle, and I promise you it does get easier. Look, that first $1,000, it's brutal. It requires constant willpower and making some pretty significant lifestyle tweaks. But those next few thousand, that's where you're building the habit. And by the time you hit $5,000 or $6,000, the process feels almost completely automatic. Your consistency, even if it's just $25 or $50 a month, is so much more important than the initial size of your contribution.
And if you need a little reality check on where you're going to find that money, consider this wild stat. The average American spends over $3,000 a year just on coffee, dining out, and random convenience purchases. $3,000? If you were to just redirect a third of that spending, not all of it, literally just 1/3, you'd hit your $10,000 goal in under 3 years. At the end of the day, it really all comes down to intentionality.
Which brings us to Section 5, your financial domino effect, unlocking real financial independence.
Once you hit that 10K milestone, I'm telling you, everything just speeds up. And this brilliantly illustrates the core truth of personal finance. We all know that one person, right? The six-figure earner driving the least luxury car, eating $20 salads for lunch, but who is somehow always completely broke and stressed out. Now contrast them with a person earning $40,000 a year, who is incredibly intentional, delays their gratification, and has substantial savings built up. The most important skill in wealth building isn't actually how much money you earn, it's how much of it you keep. That saver making 40 grand, they are actually miles closer to true financial independence.
And that is what we call the abundance mindset shift. 10 grand transitions you from viewing every single spent dollar as something that's gone forever to understanding that money is actually a tool that multiplies your options. Because you aren't constantly gasping for air, trying to make rent on the first of the month. You suddenly have the mental space to actually research stock market investments. You finally have the bandwidth to explore side hustles or passive income. You actually start planning for your retirement instead of just trying to survive until next week.
So, I'll leave you with this question. Are you ready to become the person who saves $10,000? Because the ultimate takeaway from this explainer is simply this. The person you have to become, the immense discipline, the self-awareness, and the patience you have to develop while saving your first 10 grand is infinitely more valuable to your future than the money itself. So start small, stay incredibly consistent, and let that transformation begin today.